The third bend of the Haihe River before it flows in the sea lies quiet, with a massive cruise ship docked on its northern shore. This ship, labeled Oriental Princess on its hull, was once Hong Kong's most famous casino ship in the 1990s. On the afternoon of November 18th, thick black smoke suddenly billowed from its stern. Fire truck sirens echoed in the distance, but only one truck arrived in the first 30 minutes. 3 others came much later. It took a full hour to extinguish the flames. Surprisingly, just 1 day later, renovations resumed on the ship, aiming to reopen it by the Lunar New Year. Preliminary investigations revealed that sparks from renovation work ignited insulation material, causing the fire. The Oriental Princess holds a storied past. It served as a filming location for the iconic Hong Kong gambling films God of Gamblers and The Saint of Gamblers. However, after being moved to Tianjin after the Chinese Communist Party took jurisdiction of Hong Kong, the ship gradually fell into disrepair. A local resident reminisced, "The ship has been here for decades. I grew up seeing it. It was already stranded when I was a kid. How many decks does it even have? Just a small cruise ship, really. After the renovation, it's just 6 floors, about 8,000 square meters." Another person shared a more somber memory. "It's just a tourist attraction now. I visited it when I was a kid, paid 40 yuan back then, but now they won't even let people through the gate." Amid China's current economic struggles, many residents view projects like this with pessimism. One remarked, "With today's economy and societal issues, staying healthy is what really matters. Spending resources on impractical projects like this is such a waste." Last year, a blogger documented the ship's fading glory. The interior decor remains distinctly 90s, complete with a preserved suite named Premier Joe's Room. Back in 1967, this luxury 5-star ocean liner was purchased from France to support the Tanzanian-Zambian Railway Project, a foreign aid initiative spearheaded by Premier Zhou Enlai. One can't help but wonder what Zhou might think of the ship's later life as a gambling vessel. 6 months before the fire, Tianjin authorities held a meeting to discuss revitalizing unused assets. The Oriental Princess was handed over to a company called Tianjin Tianren Oriental, which has a registered capital of only 2 million yuan. This company's parent, Shuntang, has an even smaller capital of 300,000 yuan. On Shuntang's official account, they boast about other ambitious-sounding projects. However, the renovation team appears to have ignored basic safety protocol. In China, welding work on ships is strictly regulated. It requires formal approval, on-site supervision, and full firefighting equipment. Under normal circumstances, such a fire should have never occurred, and even if it did, it should have been extinguished immediately. One observer questioned, "With such a large ship, couldn't they just pump water from the river to douse the fire?" After the incident, responsibility was passed around between departments. The Cultural Tourism Bureau claimed it was under Maritime Authority, while the Maritime Department pointed to the Haihe Water Rescue Center. Ultimately, the local fire brigade had to step in and deal with the blaze. Interestingly, this wasn't the first fire on the ship. Back in 2003, an oil spill in the engine room caused another hour-long blaze. The Oriental Princess has a rich history. It was first launched from a French shipyard in 1967 and acquired by a Chinese state enterprise. Originally named Yaohua, it was purchased during a time when ordinary citizens in China struggled to afford basic necessities like meat and fabric, yet the government spared no expense in buying this 5-star liner for its foreign aid missions. In the early 1980s, as China shifted focus from politics to economic growth, many state-owned assets were sold off at bargain prices. The Yaohua was sold to a Hong Kong tourism company and renamed Sea Dragon Star. By 1988, gambling tycoon Yip Han leased it for 5.5 million Hong Kong dollars per month, transforming it into the Oriental Princess. Each night, it would sail from Victoria Harbor to international waters, returning the next morning. This continued until the late 1990s. The ship attracted a mix of wealthy Hong Kong elites and mainland officials. Among its patrons were Ma Xiangdong, a former deputy mayor of Shenyang, who visited the ship 4 times during his studies at the Central Party School. Over 3 days, he and other officials lost millions in public funds gambling on board. Other infamous cases included a Guangdong state enterprise manager who placed bets of 800,000 Hong Kong dollars each round, and a representative from Hubei's Hong Kong office who lost 144 million Hong Kong dollars in public funds within 2 years. The former general manager of Xi'an Mechanical and Electrical Equipment Company, identified as Joe, often placed bets of 1 million Hong Kong dollars. Over time, he lost tens of millions. Reflecting on his addiction, Joe admitted, "In the end, I knew I was gambling with my life. If I won, I lived. If I didn't, I was done for. If the company still had money, I would have kept gambling." His words illustrate the recklessness and corruption that engulfed many officials at that time. By the late 1990s, the allure of the Oriental Princess began to fade. Increased competition and a crackdown on mainland officials' gambling trips to Hong Kong reduced its profitability. Its tragic turning point came in April 2002, during repairs at the Huangpu port near the Pearl River estuary. That month, 51 crew members filed a lawsuit over unpaid wages totaling 3.2 million Hong Kong dollars. The court eventually seized and auctioned the ship. In August 2002, a tourism company in Zhuhai purchased it for 6.7 million yuan, intending to transform it into a sightseeing attraction. However, before the plan materialized, the ship was sold again for 8 million yuan to Tianjin Tanggu Guotou Company at the end of the year. The sale price was strikingly low. For a 10,000-ton luxury cruise ship, even second-hand, market prices typically reach tens of millions. The starting bid of 6.3 million was less than the cost of a small cargo ship. However, upon closer examination, the price made sense. The ship's most lucrative gambling business was illegal on the mainland, and the alternative uses were uncertain. Additionally, by 2002, the vessel was already 35 years old. Although built in France with high-quality standards, maintenance costs were inevitably high. The new owner also had to pay off over 3 million Hong Kong dollars in crew charges and invest heavily in renovations. In 2003, the Oriental Princess painstakingly passed through a ship lock in Tianjin just 20 centimeters wider than its hull, finally docking along the Haihe River. In May 2004, after renovations, it reopened as a tourist attraction in Tianjin's Binhai New area. This marked the beginning of its slow and final decline. Operating as a casino ship in international waters once brought immense success, but on the mainland, such activities were illegal from the start. As one observer noted, they bought it intending to run a casino, but that was never allowed. Without its profitable gambling operations, the ship offered little more than a few restaurants, karaoke lounges, and wedding photography venues. However, in 2004, Binhai New area was still in its infancy. Its underdeveloped real estate and infrastructure, coupled with a limited local population, could not sustain the ship's operations. This type of cruise ship repurposing has failed repeatedly in China. The Minsk aircraft carrier-themed park in Nantong, for instance, burned through nearly 800 million yuan by 2016. It faced safety and operational issues, was auctioned in 2021, and suffered a near-total fire in August 2023. Similarly, Dalian's Haihe cruise ship, initially converted into a floating restaurant, changed hands multiple times due to poor management and eventually rusted in port. In contrast, cruise economies in Hong Kong and Macau continue to thrive, even post-pandemic. Macau's Genting Dream Cruise welcomed over 200,000 passengers within 6 months of resuming operations in 2023. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Kai Tak Cruise Terminal has averaged over 1 million annual visitors since its opening in 2013. Looking back, it's clear that Tianjin Tanggu Guotou's decision to purchase the aging cruise ship was short-sighted. Few considered the high maintenance costs of a 35-year-old cruise ship or the limited tourist draw of an inland city like Tianjin. Instead, they were dazzled by its past glory as a 5-star luxury liner and Hong Kong's premier casino ship, failing to foresee the bleak reality of its post-renovation operations. This decision reflects the administrative mindset of Chinese state-owned enterprises. Once a leader makes a decision, subordinates rush to implement it without regard for long-term outcomes. Whether the investment pays off in 10 or 20 years becomes someone else's problem. Acquiring the ship counted as a political achievement. Its profitability was a concern for the next administration. A similar pattern can be seen in China's wave of Ferris wheel projects. After the 2008 Beijing Olympics, local governments, inspired by the success of the London Eye, rushed to build their own Ferris wheels, hoping to boost tourism. Cities like Nanchang, Tianjin, Harbin, and Changsha joined the craze. Most of these projects have since struggled financially. For instance, the Nanchang Star, once touted as Asia's largest Ferris wheel, has ceased operations within a few years due to its remote location and lack of visitors. Harbin's wheel faced even worse challenges, as frigid winters made it inoperable. Waterfront dining projects face similar challenges. A well-placed high-end restaurant on land can usually thrive with quality food and service, but restaurants on docked ships often struggle. In the 1990s, extravagant public funds fueled bustling high-end eateries like Dalian's Tianjin fishing port, yet nearby ship restaurants sat empty, as their conspicuousness deterred officials and their high prices alienated regular customers. Even China's first domestically built luxury cruise ship, the Adora Magic City, faces challenges. With a gross tonnage of 135,000 and a construction cost of nearly 6 billion yuan, it launched this summer with ticket prices slashed from 4,000 to 2,000 yuan due to low demand. Despite the discounts, passengers complained about poor service and subpar dining options, comparing it unfavorably to older ships from a decade ago. The struggles of these projects reveal a stark mismatch between consumer spending power and demand. During its heyday in Hong Kong, the Oriental Princess thrived due to lavish overspending by mainland officials and tycoons, many fueled by public funds. Today, with stricter oversight of government expenses and stagnating wages weighed down by housing and childcare costs, few can afford such high-end attractions. These ventures simply fail to resonate with ordinary people. This situation also highlights the ripple effects of China's shift in foreign policy. During the early stages of reform and opening up, China kept a low profile, actively integrating into the global community. Efforts to attract foreign investment and tourists created opportunities for projects like these. However, the landscape has changed. As China distances itself from the United States and aligns more closely with Russia in pursuit of a new international order, it has seen a significant decline in tourists and foreign investment. This has severely impacted high-end consumption and led to the fleeing of international business. The deeper issue is a major reason behind the failures of such ventures. Ironically, even during China's most prosperous years in the early 21st century, this cruise ship failed to draw interest. A local resident from Tianjin shared, "Since late 2002, this ship has been docked in a sightseeing attraction, but hardly anyone visits. It's run down inside, and even locals aren't interested. I can't imagine how it's been kept afloat financially. It's probably been losing money all along." Some speculated about the recent fire, suggesting it might have been intentional to claim insurance. While such theories remain unverified, they reflect the widespread pessimism surrounding projects like this. For state-owned enterprises, profitability is rarely a primary concern. Acquiring a 10,000-ton cruise ship for 8 million yuan and spending tens of millions more on renovation boosts local GDP figures and adds to officials' resumes. Whether the project can sustain itself long-term is beyond their immediate concern. Many theme parks, theaters, landmark buildings, and yacht marinas in China have met similar fates for this very reason. For tourists, the Oriental Princess is simply an aging ship with no real appeal. Meanwhile, locals view it as a luxury they don't need. The city of Tianjin has struggled to regain public confidence since the devastating explosion in August 2015. Following that tragedy, much of Tianjin port's import-export and warehousing activities shifted to ports in Dalian and Shanghai. Data shows that Tianjin port's container throughput ranking in China has steadily fallen since 2015, overtaken by ports like Qingdao and Shenzhen. In this context, projects like the Oriental Princess have little room to thrive, a Tianjin resident lamented. After this fire, who knows what kind of bad luck it will bring next?